One of my favorite pieces of tech of all time is the iPad mini 7, and wildly enough, it's arguably the worst one they make. The screen is worse, the processor's worse, the cameras, speakers, pretty much everything about this thing is worse except the fact that it's tiny. And despite their larger tablets being far more capable, this iPad still remains my favorite amongst any and all tablets for multiple reasons. For one, naturally, is because of its size. This slab of metal and glass is literally only trying to be a tablet, which is something that I appreciate, whereas all the other tablets and iPads continually try and be some sort of computer and laptop replacement. Not that that's a bad thing, but sometimes it's nice to just have only a tablet. And while there's definitely less usability on the Mini when it comes down to those computer-esque functions, this tablet still remains wildly capable considering its portability. Now I will say as well, I might potentially be totally biased to this tablet, and this video might sound more like a love letter versus a long-term review, but there really is truly no part of my daily where this tablet doesn't have a key function. And while not a lot of people will fall into this category as well, I am one of those people that dailies a dumb phone as my main device, which deliberately has a huge amount of missing functionality. And while you could call it cheating, this iPad still fills almost all the gaps I'm missing to exist in a modern society. What draws me to this tablet the most is that it truly is the device I like to use primarily when it comes down to giving myself permission to sort of relax and simply decompress. The crazy thing is, it's not like I can't decompress and relax with something like my iPad Pro, since it pretty much will have all the same entertainment functionality. It's definitely going to come down to the sheer size and portability of the iPad mini. And while it is easy enough to simply bring an iPad with me wherever I might go, none of them will be as pocketable or easy to hold as the iPad mini. I've always had a bit of an irrational infatuation with small and light tech, which is why I do gravitate towards silly devices like my iPhone Air that people seem to love to hate on. But I do absolutely love it just because it's thin and light. Otherwise, if I'm not using my Air, I will be using my iPhone 13 mini, which is honestly more often than I use my iPhone Air. And of course, my 13 mini is worse than my iPhone Air in literally every single way, except for the fact that it is smaller and even lighter, and for me that's enough. Still, despite its weight and size, the iPad mini is still insanely capable when it comes down to functionality, and compared to my larger iPad Pro, it is just the device I take with me more often. And personally, I can say I am an actual literal new reader as of the last year because of you guys watching, and I didn't really even mean to sort of become a reader, but I did bring up reading on my iPad briefly in a video I made last year, and honestly, you guys flooded the comments with amazing recommendations for books, and I did end up crushing both the Red Rising series as well as the Hierarchy series, and needless to say, I got absolutely hooked with reading, and this is something that I just do literally every single day now. I never thought I'd become a reader, but here I am. Of course, there's still going to be times where I'm reading on my iPhone or my iPad Pro, but my main reading device is still actually my iPad mini, so thank you all again for your recommendations. Once again, if you guys have any amazing reads that you can't simply put down, leave them in the comment section. I can't wait to read them. I will say, similar to the iPad Pro as well, I can't help but absolutely love the Apple Pencil Pro functionality, which was upgraded with the iPad mini 7 specifically. The Apple Pencil Pro now has all the functionality you previously had on the iPad Pro, so definitely something that I appreciate now. And as somebody who loves to write a ton with pen and pencil on paper, the Apple Pencil on my iPad mini is simply one of my key features I use throughout my day multiple times. I personally love writing so much that I always maintain a fancy pencil set for writing, and I actually write all of my YouTube videos by hand before moving them over to my iPad, where I typically flesh it out a little bit more. And all of that writing is done with my Apple Pencil. Throughout 2025 and into this year as well, I have actually gotten a lot into coloring, which despite making me seem like an overgrown 12-year-old is incredibly relaxing, and the Apple Pencil works beautifully when it comes down to this. Naturally as well, writing is going to be excellent on here, especially with the continuity between iPad, Mac, and iPhone. Now, even without Paperlike sponsoring this portion of today's video, I would literally already be talking about Paperlike as I have many times in the past across dozens of videos at this point, but there's no point where I don't have a Paperlike on my iPad, and I've personally bought it many times even before working with them. Now, the reason I use Paperlike in the first place is simply due to the amount I actually lean on my Apple Pencil with my iPad, and I truly just appreciate the more realistic paper feel. This is coming from somebody who again has that irrational value for pencil on paper, so for me this is an absolute must-have. For the people who actually use their iPad with Apple Pencil a ton, you'll definitely appreciate their newest Paperlike 3 screen protector, whether it's going to be for journaling like myself, sketching, note-taking, coloring, or really anything if I'm honest. What makes Paperlike 3 a little bit more special though is in the name itself. It gives you that similar friction or texture paper has without really compromising the image on your screen compared to some other options. Where I personally despise the slippery feeling of the iPad right out of box, this does help make things feel a little bit more natural thanks to their nano dot surface technology, which does balance the paper-like feeling as well as smoothness. And as as intimidating as it can be to install these things, they have made it ever easier with their new Butterfly application system, which does come with a multi-tool and an on-screen guide. So this does end up leaving you with a perfect dust and bubble-free installation. I really do think you'll dig Paperlike 3, so be sure to check the link down below, and thanks again to Paperlike for sponsoring a portion of today's video. Now to dive deeper into the performance of my iPad mini, despite its weight and size, performance-wise again, this thing is truly going to be beyond impressive considering what it's able to do. Wildly enough, Apple has never really showcased the iPad mini as a super duper editing machine. As I mentioned, it's not really the laptop or computer replacement, but this thing can edit on Final Cut Pro incredibly well, and this sort of just surprised me. For myself, at least, whenever it comes down to editing any sort of vertical or short form content, I pretty much always use my iPad mini simply because it's so accessible, and even if I'm not using Final Cut Pro, using any of the other editing applications works incredibly well. But nonetheless, you could literally start a YouTube channel between your phone and iPad and be completely fine with just these two. Beyond that, for the times I do want to give myself permission to be an absolute degenerate, I still do like to play the odd game on my iPad, and for me it's still actually going to be my ever-growing addiction, Bellagio, that I've mentioned 1,000 times, or otherwise something like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption, or really a ton of the random games they have on Apple Arcade, which are all surprisingly great. Not to mention simply everything else that an iPad would do is near instant. And truly there's been no scenario where I've ran into any sort of stuttering or hiccups across using this device. And even when it comes down to using all those other things like the display, the speakers, the microphone, all these things perform absolutely incredibly, and I just love how simply usable this device is across all of those. The display on here does look amazing when I'm watching any sort of content, and similar to reading, you guys dropped a ton of recommendations to me because I did also just get into anime over the last year and a bit, and right now I'm working my way through My Hero Academia. Incredible recommendation, thank you again, and I'm loving it. In my world at least, it's just easy having something like the iPad mini, which allows me to catch a couple minutes here or there, and everything on here simply looks good. One thing as well that was a little bit surprising is, considering the size of this device, the speakers on here actually sound pretty damn good. Is it going to compete with my iPad Pro? Absolutely not, but it does extraordinarily well considering, and I'm usually playing music wherever I go, so I can't help but still love these speakers on here. For myself, it's going to be the times I'm just vibing out, if I'm listening to music in the shower, or whenever else it simply works. Music really is just a huge part of who I am in general, between my vinyl record collection, playing music and learning new songs on my guitar, or whatever else. This ends up being sort of my portable music hub. The built-in microphone as well is going to be easy enough for things like voice notes or if I'm tuning my guitar, and again it's all in one singular device, which I can't help but appreciate. And of course this still has those built-in cameras. I'd be lying if I said I really use the camera for anything other than scanning some documents, but for myself the magic is definitely coming from the front-facing camera. I actually use the front-facing camera a ton for Teams calls while working my day job. Otherwise my kids do love catching up with the grandparents on FaceTime every now and then, and it's just one of those intangible things that I place an irrational amount of value in, so I really do love my iPad specifically for that reason. Now coming down to some of the other things I love about my iPad is actually sort of decking it out with different accessories. Of course I mentioned the Apple Pencil Pro, I don't really need to go further into that one, but there are some other accessories that I can't say are mandatory, but they have added to my experience, and the first one I can say is some sort of folio. I typically bounce between the normal one from Apple and this sort of fancy one from Moft. The Apple one is kind of expensive for what it is since there's no extra angles or anything, but it does the job and I kind of love the way it looks and feels. But when I do need something a little bit extra, I do use this Moft one, which does have additional angles for portrait, or otherwise whenever I'm watching a show or something I can prop it up a little bit higher, which is pretty sweet. Beyond that is the SD card dongle that I use a ton for moving your own footage for editing, or otherwise just photos from my Fuji camera. And then of course the last one I use is probably going to be my crossbody bag for the times I'm actually bringing my iPad with me on the go, which honestly is pretty frequent. So this does end up being a staple for myself, especially for the days I am out and about with my dumb phone. This is just absolutely convenient. Now a lot of this video seems to be me fanboying about this iPad, and honestly I kind of am. I truly just love this device. If I absolutely had to pick between my iPad Pro and my iPad mini, needless to say I'd be going with my mini just because of its portability. This thing has the smaller screen, the worst processor, worse cameras, worse everything really compared to the Pro lineup, and probably even the regular iPad lineup. But for myself it just ticks way too many boxes for my literal every single day usages, and for me that's enough to sort of end up being my favorite iPad. The fact that it really is the only tablet trying to just be a tablet is invaluable to me, and I can't wait to see whatever next upgrades they have on the next iPad mini, whenever the heck that's going to be, but I am looking forward to it. Now is this thing perfect? Absolutely not. I would have loved to see the display being OLED like the Pro lineup or like all the other iPhones, but maybe some thinner bezels would also be nice. But beyond that, I really can't think much that needs upgrading with this iPad. To me at least, it's pretty much already almost perfect. But yeah, that's the iPad mini 7, the only tablet that's still trying to be a tablet, and I really do dig it. I will have everything I use with my iPad linked down below if you do want to check it out. I appreciate you guys watching till the end. Till next time.